Right from the start, notice how procedural this is. Every correction, every date matters. What seems like minor paperwork is actually critical in sentencing. Even a single wrong release date could change the timeline of justice.
Michigan versus Scott Nicholas Truax. This is case number 25-14049FH. Appearances, please.
Nate Carnes on behalf of the folks.
Robert Hartel from Mr. Truax, who joins me at the table, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right, Mr. Carnes, any amendments, corrections, or objections to make to the contents of the report?
Yes, Your Honor. On CFJ 145, page 2, says the defendant was released on April 1st. However, I show he was released on a PR bond on March 20th. So I would like to correct that release date to March 20th, 2025, and then I think the jail credit should be 2 days at that point.
Mr. Hartel?
After confirming with my client, we believe that's accurate.
I will go ahead and change those, make those corrections. Anything else, Mr. Carnes?
Thank you, Your Honor. No, that was it.
How about you, Mr. Hartel?
Just some relatively small ones, Your Honor. On CFJ 145, page 1, the alcohol abuse history, my client doesn't deny using alcohol during that range, but tells me it was very small amount, so I'm not sure if that'd be appropriate to leave in there. We trust the court's discretion on that part. Page 2 in the final paragraph, my client, and I've confirmed with him, he denies saying that he didn't think he wouldn't get caught because the victim was a woman, and he denies deleting anything. I know there's references to both those there. I didn't want to stress those facts to the court.
All right, well, I assume, Mr. Hartel, Mr. Van Appels, were those statements that you made based upon your information with him? I said your information with him. I meant your interview with him.
That would have come from the report, and
I mean, it makes sense that a person would think they wouldn't get caught because the other person was a different vendor, because the person would have been able to get in the restroom, allegedly. Yeah, right.
oh, sorry, Your Honor. So I probably wrote it incorrectly in my report. He didn't think he would get caught. He did it because she's female. So it should be two separate.
All right, we'll go ahead and make the change. Obviously, it's all, I'm sorry. Any objection to that change, Mr. Hartel?
My client's been clear that he denied thinking that mindset in general, but
Well, he didn't intend to get a picture of a woman because she was a woman?
he denied the fact that he didn't think he.
I know, he's not saying that he's correcting. He's saying that, all right, your client's saying he didn't think he'd get caught?
Upon thinking more about what
Yeah.
we just said a moment ago, I do believe that phrasing would be more proper.
Good enough. Good enough. Anything else?
Relatively small, but that promises a lot.
Up to this point, we're deep in the technicals, pages, reports, and corrections. But now, the case is about to shift dramatically. The courtroom's quiet tension builds as the victim herself prepares to speak. This is where the emotion cuts through the paperwork.
Last one.
It's okay.
On CFJ 284, page 9, in the liabilities, instead of $492 on a vehicle loan, my client is paying $592 on the vehicle loan. That's the only other amendment.
All right, we'll make that. That's simple enough. All right, allocution then, sir.
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, wait, hold on. I was going to say, do we have a victim impact statement?
We do, Your Honor.
You may come forward, ma'am. Autumn? Autumn, make sure you speak up because right behind you is that air conditioning unit, and it makes it difficult for everyone to hear. And more importantly for me, and even more importantly than me, Nancy right in front of me. All right, thank you, ma'am. You may go ahead.
Good morning, Your Honor. I appreciate the opportunity to take stand today to speak. I appear before you not just as a victim, but as a member of the community who believes that a crime like this is not overlooked, and that my experience will not be forgotten, but serve to help other victims as well. I know I'll never forget. On February 15th of 2025, I opened on Saturday with Scott. This was the first time I had ever worked alone with him. Even though I worked alongside with him for about a year, I never knew him personally other than his wood burning side business that he would promote at the parts counter. One other employee stopped by to help us throughout the day, but ended up leaving sooner than expected due to how slow things were for us. I was left alone to close the store with Scott, in which no incidents occurred. The next day, February 16th of 2025, I was scheduled by myself to work at the register, and Scott was scheduled to work in parts. Unbeknownst to me, Scott had arrived an hour earlier than scheduled. When I arrived at work, I used the bathroom a few times within the hour. I noticed Scott going in there once or twice as well, but like anyone else, I didn't think anything of it. Why would I? Everyone knows, even if a bathroom is public, what happens behind closed doors should remain private. Running roughly around noon, I used the washroom once more. When I turned to leave, I had shut off the lights, and in the corner of my eye, I had spotted a different light behind me, a flashlight that I knew shouldn't have been in there. I investigated it, and I found an iPhone zip tied to the shelving unit with its camera facing the toilet. I was paralyzed with fear, seeing it had been recording me for an hour, just using the bathroom. Without thinking any further, I took the device from the ties and attempted to get into the phone. I felt helpless, seeing that it was password protected.
And there it is, the confession. Cold, unapologetic. Imagine that moment, realizing someone you worked beside every day violated your privacy in the most personal way possible. This isn't just a crime, it's a betrayal.
As Scott was the only other employee there, thinking that he was safe, I brought the phone to him, wanting to believe how it was just a customer. Since he was dealing with an older customer, I told him briefly about what I found as I handed the phone over. I'd check in a minute, he told me. Within the following minutes, as the customer had walked out, instead of walking past the bathroom, Scott waddled past me to follow the customer outside. He looked me in the face and told me how it was his phone. There were no apologies, and I don't need an apology, as I won't be forgiving him. I asked him why, and the reasoning he gave me was because he's a dumbass and he had his head up his ass. Those words stick with me. And even though that's what I think of him as well, I've been struggling every day since then. It's been 5 months since what happened, and I'm still learning to pick myself off the ground. It felt worse when that predator had called me over to the back of the store to look through his photo gallery to make sure the video he had of me and whoever else could have walked in there was deleted, to make sure the only evidence I could have had was deleted. It was right there when I wished I could have disappeared completely. That bathroom to me was a safe space. Whether I'm using the bathroom, washing my hands, or straightening out my clothes, it's a private space. A place that felt safe. I felt safe in. Now I feel unsafe using any public restroom. I've been struggling ever since that day. I live in a small community. It makes things more difficult as word spreads quickly. Everyone has treated me differently since then in a way that almost feels humiliating. Many people have talked about what has happened behind my back, but nobody has shown concern for what has happened to me. I loved the village. I loved where I work, but now I have to return to the scene on a daily basis to earn a living and be constantly reminded about the trauma, the weight continuing to add onto my shoulders. After I took a week off of work, the first day back, I was harassed by a regular customer who had known what had happened. I had felt like my face was in the dirt and she just rubbed it in along with everyone else. It has affected my relationship with regular customers and my work ethic as I struggle to even pretend to be happy in the work environment. I would show up to work crying about how miserable I felt, how alone I felt, not knowing if I was the only victim or not. It's because of him I have to stand here and call myself a victim, which is never easy to do either. I feel like a broken version of myself, frozen in time and often dissociating throughout the day.
Her statement is powerful, not just as testimony, but as a window into how long trauma lingers. Notice how she shifts from recounting the event to explaining its ripple effects. Fear, isolation, even hypervigilance. This is what real impact sounds like.
Knowing I'm not the same. Knowing the true version of me I loved is left behind with other bits and pieces that broke that day. I no longer find enjoyment in dolling myself up or wearing jewelry. I find double layers more comfortable even suffering through the uncomfortable heat of the summer. I fear of being objectified like I was that day. Ever since then, I've developed a habit of watching the highway and keeping an eye on who drove in fear of seeing Scott staring me down as he passes by. I get triggered by customers coming in and non-intentionally asking me where to find zip ties. And I have to reassure myself that just because some of my coworkers still have wooden items that Scott had made, that they don't support his actions. It's because of him I've had to pick up therapy again, and because of him I have to try and reassure myself that my job is a safe place. I'm here because of Scott and his deliberate actions of preying on a young woman, a young, naive woman. I urge the court to consider my story when deciding his sentencing.
Thank you, Mr. Bartel. Before you begin, I'm going to note that the court has received and reviewed a defendant's mitigation report. It consisted of a little over 2, and I want to say 4 pages. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. What I will add to that is earlier today when I regrouped with my client a bit about the situation, he advised me that in the PSI where it mentions corrective behavioral therapy training being recommended by the probation department, he actually is fully on board with doing that as proof that he's capable of rehabilitating himself. He wants to make sure he's as good of a member of society as possible. Situations like this, without paraphrasing too much or putting too many words in his mouth, really are a mirror where he can see the flaws that perhaps he wasn't aware of that were there. And he wants to make sure that these situations don't reoccur, that no one else feels the way that the young woman who testified here a moment ago feels. He can't change the past, but he can control the future. And I ask the court to give him the opportunity on probation. I do believe that he will complete successfully. To my knowledge, he hasn't had any bond violation issued. And again, he is very willing to complete any type of training that the court or probation department feel is in the benefit of him or society. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Farns?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think Ms. Carlson summed this up very well. This was an extreme invasion of privacy. She was in a private place where no eyes belong, and there were digital eyes staring at her, and she's had to deal with the trauma of that.
All right, Mr. Truax, you have the right to make a statement if you choose to do so. Anything you wish to say at this time, sir?
There's nothing I can say, Your Honor.
First of all, we live in a world where people are quite insensitive. And so to the young woman, Autumn, whoever comes in and says something rude to you, that person's a jerk, right? Unfortunately, people have the unwritten constitutional right to be jerks. So there's a lesson there. And I'm not scolding, I'm just trying to say there's a lesson there for you. That person's the weak person.
Here's where it gets interesting. The judge starts reflecting out loud. He's visibly torn between the moral weight of the crime and the legal limits placed on him. What comes next shows how soft laws can clash with common sense justice.
Next, you talked about not being able to forgive. I understand that. However, I encourage you to rethink that. Here's why. I want you to take control. By sometimes forgiving, then you deny the impact that it has on you. That's a personal strength that I think a young person can take from this as a lesson. It's not trying to tell you that I think you're wrong for not forgiving them. Nope. That's not my point. My point is that sometimes when you do give forgiveness, that's a way that you, when you're able to reach it, you take control and stop allowing anything to impact you from this event. And I hope that you are able to do that. Hopefully I said that well enough. Now, the defendant here, trying to figure out how it got here. I don't know. I look here at the defendant's prior criminal history, and it's minimal. I see a domestic violence. I see something that looks like it's from another jurisdiction that talks about assault on a female. That's from a different state down in North Carolina. So it's obvious. To me, it just looks like the defendant doesn't have the respect for the other gender. And now here he is videotaping somebody in the bathroom. Now I have to balance that with the law. The law says that I am not allowed to give him a jail unless there are reasonable grounds. So get on the phone if you choose and contact your legislator. Guarantee you, your senator here is one of the ones who voted for this rule that says if he scores an intermediate sanction cell, I'm to start with the presumption that it's probation, fines, and costs. I don't get to criticize, nor do I, or will I, the legislature, but that's the legislator's decision. They have told me and every judge in the state of Michigan that this is to be considered a non-jailable offense, no matter what it says. So, and that was developed from a task force on trying to reduce populations inside confinement facilities. And I can't use as reasonable grounds factors that are already taken into consideration, such as the impact upon the victim, which is already scored underneath the guidelines. Now, Mr. Truax, I strongly suspect this is going to limit your ability to get a job, because you are clearly going to have this conviction over your head. And if anybody starts to do some research, they're going to know that you used their business or a business to videotape a young woman in a bathroom because you don't understand boundaries and you are selfish and you don't care who you hurt. Call that what it is. So that's who you are. Figure it out. It shouldn't be any surprise because your prior criminal history tells me the exact same thing. Now, if I look for reasonable grounds, he also doesn't have any probation violations.
Watch closely. This is one of those subtle yet symbolic moments in sentencing. The judge admits he can't order sex offender registration, even though the crime clearly invades sexual privacy. So instead, he finds another way to make the punishment sting. It's justice within boundaries.
Successfully completed probation in the past. So the court places the defendant upon a period of probation for 24 months. I find that the terms and conditions listed on CFJ 145, pages 2 and 3 are well suited for rehabilitative purposes. However, I will strike paragraph 11, where there was not any involvement of weapons in this particular instance. And I don't have any weapons listed in his prior criminal history. And it also says in paragraph or condition number 4, talks about therapy. He's going to have to complete some kind of therapy, and it's going to be whatever Mr. Van Atten says and whatever meets his requirements. The court assesses a $68 state minimum fee, a $130 crime victims' right fund fee, a $300 court cost. One moment. How old was Miss Carlson? Over
21, Your Honor.
Because she's not a minor, there's no sex offender registration that I can give them. However, add a little bit of extra sting to it. The court assesses $1,000 in fine, a $300 attorney fee. Supervision fees are $30 a month or $60 a month if there's any electronic monitoring. Was there any DNA?
Yes, Your Honor, a $60 DNA fee to the Wexford County Sheriff's Office.
Fine, we will add that.
And there is a restitution request as well, if I may have another.
Go ahead. What's the amount? I assume it's for for treatment or counseling?
Yes, Your Honor, $275.
Who would stipulate that?
All right, $275 payable to the victim in the case, Ms. Carlson. All right, have I missed anything, Mr. Van Attel?
No,
All right, thank you. Mr. Carnes.
No, Your Honor, thanks.